Every one of these 5 listings will tell you you're sleeping inside a real train caboose. By the end of this video, you'll know that's only fully true for about 3 of them. The cheapest caboose on this list starts at $99 a night, and the most expensive one runs $232. All 5 are real, currently bookable stays, not museum pieces you tour for 10 minutes and leave, but places where you actually spend the night, order confirmation and all. And unlike a hotel room, no 2 of these 5 look, feel, or operate anything alike. You're not comparing 5 variations on the same product. You're comparing 5 completely different answers to the same basic question. What do you do with a retired train car once the railroad doesn't need it anymore? But here's the thing, nobody selling you the listing tells you up front. Caboose starts meaning something very specific. A real, retired rail car, unchanged enough that you can still see the railroad in it. And by the far end of this list, it starts meaning something much looser, a themed getaway that happens to have a caboose parked somewhere on the property. Same word on every listing page. Very different thing behind the door. We also went looking specifically for cabooses that are actually out of the way, off a main highway, away from any built-up tourist strip, because a fair number of the caboose stays that turn up first in a search are actually sitting in the middle of a busy historic downtown. 3 strong-looking candidates got cut from this list for exactly that reason before we ever got to scripting. One of them sits on the largest privately owned collection of cabooses on Earth, 38 of them, a genuine world record. But the whole property sits directly on a highway in the middle of one of the busiest tourist corridors on the East Coast. Another is a single caboose parked a block off the main street of a historic mining boomtown that pulls in tour buses all summer. A third sits directly on the highway that circles a lake resort town. All 3 are real, all 3 are bookable, and none of them are remote in any honest sense of the word. So none of them made this list. What's left are 5 that actually hold up to that bar. So we're going in the order of how much of each stay is actually the original railroad car, starting with the one that changed the least and ending with the one that stretched the definition the furthest. Part of why a caboose specifically works as a stay and not just a novelty is the shape of the thing. A traditional caboose has a cupola, that raised lookout box on the roof where a conductor used to sit and watch the length of the train for trouble. And in the first entry on this list, that exact cupola is where the queen bed ends up. Watch for how much of that original shape survives or doesn't as we work through the rest of the list. One more thing before we start. We could not pull a live booking calendar for any of these 5. Check real availability yourself before you plan a trip around anything in this video, most authentic to least. Here's number 1. CR Station rents for around $124 a night, and the caboose itself was built in 1973 for the SOO Line Railroad, a real working freight car for over 40 years before it ever became a place to sleep. It sits on a private farm outside Decorah, a small town of about 7,400 people in northeast Iowa, near where State Highway 9 crosses US Route 52. But the caboose itself is well off both, down a rural road overlooking a horse pasture with no adjacent shops or restaurants in sight. This isn't a business built for tourists passing through. It's someone's actual side property, rented out because it turned out to be too good to just sit empty. The owner, a man named Jim, found the 52,000-pound car heading for a salvage yard in 2016 and bought it for $8,000 before it could be scrapped. Here's why this one opens the list. Jim kept the original conductor's chairs and overhead handrails in place rather than ripping them out, even while spending around $4,000 and 300 hours rebuilding the rest of the interior nights and weekends with his daughter, Danielle. 2 bedrooms fit inside. A queen bed up in the cupola, accessed by its own staircase, and bunk beds down below, with a full kitchen, air conditioning, and Wi-Fi, sleeping up to 4 people total. Guests consistently mention the same 2 things: watching the sunset from the old conductor's chairs and the horses wandering right up to the yard in the morning. The honest catch, there's only 1 small bathroom for up to 4 guests, and this is a private residential property, not a business with a front desk. It's self-check-in, so if anything goes wrong during your stay, there's no on-site staff to call. It's also rated 4.85 out of 5 across hundreds of reviews and carries Airbnb's own guest favorite badge, and the review count is still climbing in 2026. This isn't some listing nobody's booked in years. It's an active, working rental with a real host actually managing it. That's the bar the rest of this list gets measured against. A real freight car, 40-plus years of railroad service, with its original fittings still bolted in rather than stripped out for a cleaner look. $124 a night for that is, frankly, a bargain once you see what the far end of this list actually looks like. The next stop drops the price and the guest count, but keeps the same idea. No add-ons, no second building, just the caboose. The Cozy Caboose runs around $190 a night, and it's caboose number 11269, built in 1948 for the Santa Fe Railway, originally hauling freight through Washington and Idaho before it ever saw Oregon. It's perched on the first foothill of Oregon's Coast Range, just outside Philomath, in the Willamette Valley, described by more than one independent travel writer as a genuinely remote spot, about 15 minutes from Corvallis, with a wide view across the valley below. Unlike the last entry, there's no attached building, no second structure on the property built for guests. The caboose itself is the entire stay. Inside, a king bed, a kitchenette, and one compact bathroom with a shower. Comfortable, but sized for 2 people. Not a family. There's a garden and hiking trails on the property, plus an outdoor fire pit for the evenings, and reviewers repeatedly single out the valley view and the quiet as the reason they'd come back. It holds a 4.9 out of 5 rating across more than 300 reviews, and not one of them rates it below 4 stars, a near-perfect track record for a single-unit rental run by one owner. Here's the honest catch, and it's about our own research, not the property. We could only confirm this exact price through one chain of sources, not 2 independently. Every other listing on this video, we cross-checked against a second, separate source. This is the one exception, so treat the number as a close estimate, not a locked-in figure, and recheck it yourself before booking. It's a reminder that even a highly reviewed, clearly active listing can still be thin on independently reported pricing history. Popularity with guests and verifiability in the press are 2 different things. Under $200 for a single, unmodified 1948 freight car turned one-room home. No attached buildings, no theme, no jacuzzi. The next one keeps the real railroad heritage, but adds something this one doesn't have. Neighbors, in the form of 2 more cabooses on the same property, and a much longer operating history behind it. Grassy Creek Cabooses starts at $99 a night, and the property has been renting real railroad cabooses since 2002, starting with a single car and growing into a small family business over more than 2 decades. It sits a mile and a half off the Blue Ridge Parkway at milepost 193 on 33 acres of Virginia mountain land near Fancy Gap, with a trail down the hillside to the creek the property is named for. That first caboose came from a Railroad Historical Society in Greensboro. The exact original railroad that built it isn't confirmed in our research, so we're not naming one on screen, but the car itself is real, retired rail stock, not a replica built to look like one. Today, there are 3 cabooses plus a separate depot-style cabin, each with a private bath, a kitchenette, and a satellite TV with well over 100 channels, noticeably more amenity-focused than either of the 2 single-unit stays earlier on this list. And this is where the list starts drifting from pure preservation toward comfort. Some of the units now have 2-person jacuzzi tubs installed inside, which is a real upgrade from a bare-bones railcar, and also the first sign on this list of a caboose being renovated for relaxation rather than just kept as history. It's still a family-run operation, though. You're as likely to reach the owner by a local phone number as through an app. The honest catch, it holds a more modest 4 out of 5 rating, lower than every other entry on this list. A small family operation, not a polished brand, plus a 2-night minimum stay and a genuinely remote mountain drive to get there on winding parkway roads with the spottier cell signal that comes with it. The Blue Ridge Parkway itself is one of the most visited scenic drives in the country, which is exactly why a property a mile and a half off it can still feel this isolated. The traffic is on the parkway, not on the gravel road down to the Cabooses. $99 for real rail stock that's been slowly renovated into comfort over 20+ years. The next one is technically still a caboose stay too, but now the railroad car shares the spotlight with an entire wildlife park built around it. The cabooses at Wildlife Prairie Park start at $99 a night, and there are only 3 of these Santa Fe heritage units on the entire 1,800-acre property. A non-profit wildlife preserve, not a hotel chain, about 10 miles west of Peoria. The cabooses sit on the edge of the park's bison and elk range, inside a non-profit preserve that's home to over 150 animals across 60 different species, and staying overnight includes free admission to the whole park. Hiking over 25 miles of trails, fishing, kayaking, biking, disc golf, and the animal trails are all included in the room rate, with only extras like train rides and special seasonal events costing more. That's a genuinely different value proposition than anything else on this list. You're not paying for a caboose with a view of the woods, you're paying for a caboose with a season pass to a wildlife park attached. This is the point on the list where the caboose itself stops being the main character. The cars are one lodging option among several at a park whose identity is wildlife conservation, not railroad history, alongside cabins and a converted manor house elsewhere on the property. You're not booking a caboose experience first and a nature park second here. You're booking a day at the park that happens to include sleeping in one of 3 cabooses on site. The honest catch: these units are only bookable seasonally, April through October, and with only 3 of them spread across 1,800 acres, they're the scarcest booking on this entire list. Book too late in the season, and there simply isn't a 4th unit to fall back on. Weekday stays need just 1 night minimum. Weekend stays need 2, 3 on holiday weekends. And because it's a working animal park rather than a quiet private stay, expect daytime foot traffic from day visitors on the trails near your caboose even after the park gates close to the public each evening. Same $99 floor as the last entry, but now the caboose is a side attraction to a wildlife park, not the point of the trip. The last stop on this list pushes that even further and adds a price jump to match. The caboose in Canajoharie runs $232 a night, the most expensive stay on this list, and it sits on 50 acres of working farmland in New York's Mohawk Valley, with resident roosters, turkeys, sheep, a pony, and a horse guests can feed each morning. Here's the honest catch, and it's the biggest one on this entire list. This listing is actually a caboose combined with an attached train station building, and the property sleeps up to 6 people across 3 bedrooms. But only 2 of those beds, a pair of twins, are physically inside the caboose itself. Everyone else on a full group booking is sleeping in the station building next door, not the rail car. The listing holds a 9.4 out of 10 exceptional rating across around 30 reviews, and guests consistently mention 2 things: feeding the farm animals in the morning and the electric fireplace and wood-burning fire pit for the evenings. We also could not confirm which railroad, if any, originally operated this specific car. So unlike every other entry on this list, we're not naming an origin story here because we don't have one that checks out. What you're booking is a real caboose as part of a themed farm getaway, fire pit, mountain views, farm animals wandering the 50 acres, where the marketing leans entirely on the atmosphere around the car, not on the railroad history of the car itself. It's the priciest night on this list, and by our own definition, the least authentic one, which is exactly the point this whole ranking was building toward. None of that makes it a bad stay. The reviews are genuinely strong, and 50 acres of Mohawk Valley farmland with a fire pit and a caboose in view is a perfectly good weekend. It just isn't strictly what the listing title implies you're sleeping inside. 5 cabooses, 5 real bookable stays, and 1 honest answer to the question we opened with. Not all 5 of these are equally real. CR Station in Iowa and the Cozy Caboose in Oregon are unmodified, single rail cars with their original railroad history intact. Grassy Creek in Virginia is real rail stock slowly renovated toward comfort. Wildlife Prairie Park in Illinois turns the caboose into a side attraction at a wildlife preserve, and the caboose in New York is honestly mostly a themed farm stay that includes a caboose, not the other way around. The price didn't track the authenticity at all. The most real stay on this list in Iowa was also one of the cheapest, and the least authentic one, in New York, was the most expensive. Virginia and Illinois, sitting in the middle of the price range, sat in the middle of the authenticity question too, for 2 completely different reasons. 1, because comfort upgrades are slowly replacing the original bones of the car. The other, because the caboose was never really the main attraction to begin with. If you're chasing genuine railroad history and not just the aesthetic of one, price is not the signal to follow. Read what you're actually booking, specifically how much of the listing photos show the original car versus everything built up around it. To be clear, this is informational, not a booking service. We're not affiliated with any of these 5 properties. Live booking calendars weren't independently confirmed for any of them, and every rate in this video is the lowest published figure as of our research, not a flat, guaranteed price. Verify directly with each listing before you plan a trip. One last pattern, since it's the kind of thing that's easy to miss scrolling through listing photos. The closer a caboose stays to being just the caboose, one car, unmodified, no attached buildings, no second structure competing for attention, the more likely it is to also be the remote, out-of-the-way stay this whole video went looking for in the first place. The 2 ends of this list, Iowa and New York, make that pattern almost too clean. The most original car is also the most isolated property, and the most diluted caboose experience is also the one built specifically as a curated, easy-to-reach getaway. That's probably not a coincidence. Remoteness is expensive to build a business around, so the properties that lean hardest into comfort and amenities tend to be the ones within easier reach of everything else. If you've stayed in one of these, or you know a caboose stay more remote than any of these 5, put it in the comments. And if this was useful, subscribing helps us keep finding places like this.